Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning and good evening. Welcome to attend the Retalk Philippines, leading with insights on the CNI solar sectors, hosted by the Leader Associates, powered by the world leading solar manufacturer Goodway. And my name is Cni, and the conference producer of the Leader Associates. Today, I will host this webinar for you and a deep dive on the Philippines emerging C&I industry and market. And before we started, I will inform that every speakers will have 15 minutes for presenting. And if there is time left, it will have a Q&A session for the speaker. And if you like to, for the audience, if you like to ask us a questions to the certain speaker, please write it down to the Q&A box for the answer. And if you have the technical issues of the voice and the display, please don't worry and just mention it under the chat box, and we will try our best to support you. And this webinar recording will be released on YouTube and this next week for your review. Okay, before the beginning, let's have the guideline of the agenda, and this webinar will start it by honorably start by the presentation from the Department of the Energy Philippines. The topic is solar policy integration and the solar development through the CNI. And the second second topic is SunAsia's 1.25 gigawatts solar project in Luzon with Blueleaf Energy. And the third one is the SunAsia's energy partner, Blueleaf Energy's topic, trends in corporate renewable energy demand, a perspective from the Blueleaf Energy. And the fourth one is Philippines Total Energy's perspective on the Philippines C&I market, characteristics, an overview, and opportunities. And the fifth one is comes from the presentation from the Goodway and the Baywa Solar. And their topic is applying the solar storage to home and the C&I in Philippines. And the last one will be presented by the Spectrums. The topic is new opportunities in residential solar. And according Philippines government's strong ambition in increasing its solar capacity, PV's capacity from the 1.16 gigawatts in 2020 to 15.29 gigawatts in 2030. The solar market in the country, including the large-scale PV system updates, emerging floating solar projects, and especially strong growing C&I solar rooftops, especially to garner more support from the government. This webinar will take you a deep dive through the Philippines solar industry with the mainstreams at the Total Solar, SunAsia Energy, Goodway, Baywa, and Macris Blueleaf Energy, and DOE Philippines, each of which is playing an increasing vital role in the Philippines renewable energy industry. Okay, please kindly find our this webinar speakers. And the first is Jamie Planas, surprising science research specialist from the Department of Energy Philippines. And the second speaker will show us through a video presentation. She is Mona Lisa Diamalenta. From the PGS, the law is the former chairperson of the NERB, and the third speaker is Tachi Cruz Kaplan. She is presented and the CEO of the SunAsia Energy. And fourth is Arnold Aya, Corporate Solutions Director of the Blueleaf Energy. Fifth is the Sandra Bruni, the Sales Director Philippines from the Total Solar. And the sixth is Jiao Jiang, SEA and the Middle Asia, the business head from the group we. And third one is Junhui Castro, the director of sales SEA from the Baywa Solar. And the last one is Robert Marlon Parija, chief operating officer from the M Spectrum. And firstly, please find the best wish from the former chair of the NREB. And considering she had a private reason, he cannot able to join this webinar, but he gave us best wishes. Thanks for the invitation to this webinar. I'm not able to join the significant conversation on live, but consistently to contribute to this increasingly important topic on the C&I market in Philippines. With solar, and she comes up with an important question: is will solar industry players drive the Philippine energy transition? And she thinks we are all the challenging forces with questions forward. And she also believes this webinar will help us overcome the questions. And Ms. Dimalanta's video presentation with deep insights will be included by the webinar recording through the leader associate channels after this webinar. Okay, before the official started, I will introduce ourselves directly. And we are the Leader Associates. Leader Associates is a global leading renewable energy event organizer, which provides clients premium solutions in the fields of the professional event organization and customized business services. And we are dedicated to build the relationships, bring the worldwide know-how, and create new commercial opportunities for all our clients in the renewable energy industry. Okay, now let's get it started with the first topic. The solar policy integration and the solar development through the C&I by the JMB Plums and TM supervising science research specialized of the solar and wind energy management division from the Department of Energy, Philippines. Hello, Mr. Planas.
Hi, hello, Ray. Grace, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Hold on. There you go. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all our participants, my co-presenters. Regrets that our Undersecretary Felix William Contebella is not able to attend in this webinar because of equally important commitments. So I'll be presenting in his behalf. What I'll be presenting to you is the overall renewable energy program of the Department of Energy, where solar energy is one of the technologies or resources that contributes to the attainment of the overall goal. So the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, otherwise known as Republic Act 9513, aims to accelerate the exploration and development of RE resources in order to achieve energy self-reliance and through the adoption of clean energy to mitigate the effect of climate change. In this law, is able to provide fiscal and non-fiscal incentives for the promotion on the efficient use of renewable energy for its commercial application. If you can see the letters on your left screen, the big show, this it means the technologies, the renewable energy technologies. The BI is the biomass, G is for geothermal, S is for solar, H is for hydro, O is for ocean, and W is for wind. So since the implementation of the RE Act of 2008, interest in renewable energy in the country has been strong and encouraging due to the initiatives of the government through implementation of various policies and programs. Along with the global recognition to reduce carbon emissions, the Philippines is aligning with the rest of the world in taking the renewables track. The DOE is envisioning that by 2040, the country would have a reliable, sustainable supply that will foster a balance between economic growth and the protection of the environment. This slide shows the in 2020 total RE capacity addition is at 81.3 megawatts. That's for 2020 only, which brings the total additional RE installations from the enactment of the RE Act in 2008 to a level of 2,338.69 megawatts. This translates to the total estimated investments of about 221 billion. And from 2009 to 2020, some 142,000 jobs were created, ranging from short-term engagements for the conduct of the studies and construction of the RE power plants to the long-term employment for operation and maintenance. There is a 16% decrease in employment from 2019. That's 168,000 jobs due to the non-performing RE projects that were terminated. In April this year, there was a published report from HSBC Global Research touted the Philippines as the best, second best investment destination for renewables in Southeast Asia. This is because the country's attractive regulatory environment and highly liberalized active spot market. Renewables in the Philippines will also be one of the cheapest source of power, as levelized cost of energy was estimated to go down by 16% for solar and 22% for offshore wind by 2025. In this slide, you will see that we have awarded contracts as of May to 2021. Of the 928 RE projects, that has a potential capacity of about 29,971.08 megawatts. Solar translates to about 40% of the total. And of this 40%, 11,900 is for commercial, and about 8 megawatts is for own use. So this slide shows the projected RE share in the energy mix. The upper matrix shows the business as usual. So if the percent increment stands at just 1% from 2020 to 2040, the RE share would stand at 17% and 15% for 2030 and 2040. That is why the lower matrix shows an adjustment from 1% from RE share to 2.52% starting 2023 up to 2040, which will redound to the attainment of 35%, the target RE share by 2030, and for 2040 is 55%. So this is the aspirational target in the country's generation mix by 2030 and 2040 respectively. So what will be the needed policy mechanisms in order to attain the said targets? So on your slide is the support RE development support mechanisms, which include the feed-in tariff, the renewable portfolio standards, green energy option program, the green energy auction program, the enhancement of the net metering, and the development of 25 competitive RE zones. We are now gearing to fully implement the RE Act by developing the policies and programs that will accelerate the position of RE in the power mix, facilitating an environment conducive to the investment and empowering electricity and users with the implementation of the RE mechanisms, both mandatory and voluntary programs. Among these policy mechanisms include renewable portfolio standard, green energy auction policy, green energy option program, and the enhanced net metering. So feed-in tariff is a RE policy that offers graduated payments on a fixed rate per kilowatt hour for emerging RE resources, excluding any generation for own use. Hydropower for the feed-in tariff system still has a remaining balance of 103.89 megawatt capacity from its installation target as of 31 March 2021. An additional 107 megawatts of FIT capacity from the 19 hydropower projects is projected to be installed in 2021 to 2022. And on the other hand, FIT system for biomass was extended until end of 2019. However, there are 10 biomass projects with a total export capacity of about 90 megawatts who are appealing for FIT. The DOE issued COE FIT eligibility to 4 biomass plants in Negros Island with a condition that the committed capacity shall only be exported to the grid upon the completion of NGCP CNP 230 kilovolt backbone stage 3 project. It should be noted that these power plants are operational but not allowed to export power to the grid due to said condition and instead utilize their own energy generation for their own consumption. The RPS, or the Renewable Portfolio Standard, is a market-based policy that requires mandated participants to source a portion of their generation from eligible RE facilities. All mandated participants under the Renewable Portfolio Standards were on grid were still required to comply with their RPS obligations in 2020, while the compliance year for RPS off-grid was suspended until further notice. Recent simulations suggest that the 1% annual increment in the mandated participants' requirements will not be sufficient and must be increased by 2023 to a level of 2.52% in order to reach the aspirational target as earlier mentioned. Thus, the DOE is determining appropriate percentage increment for the imposition of the RPS requirements to the mandated participants. Meanwhile, the Green Energy Option Program provides end users the power of choice. It is a voluntary policy mechanism under the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 that allows electricity end users with 100 kilowatt and above demand to source out the electricity supply from any renewable energy supplier. So with proper negotiation and appropriate contracting based on load profiling, lower cost of electricity to end users is possible. GEOP will also serve as the vehicle to reach the end users' decarbonization and democratization goals by utilizing 100% electricity from renewable energy. To facilitate the issuance of GEOP, operating permit to resuppliers, and the DOE then issued the Department Circular Number DC 2020-04-009 entitled Guidelines Governing the Issuance of Operating Permits to Renewable Energy Suppliers under the GEOP program on April 22, which took effect a month later on 22 May 2020. As of July 2021, there are 13 RE suppliers that has registered with GEOP operating permit. Full implementation of the GEOP will be realized upon the issuance of ERC's regulatory framework. So another program is the enhancement of the net metering program. This is the first mechanism in the RE law that was implemented in 2013. The net metering program, which allows end users with RE facilities not exceeding 100 kilowatt in power generating capacity installed in their premises to participate. As of March 2021, there are a total of 4,593 qualified end users with that were registered and under the net metering program, which has an aggregate capacity of about 37 megawatt peak. To further increase consumer participation in the program, the DOE promulgated circular prescribing the policies to enhance the net metering program for renewable energy systems. Among others, this mandates the DUs or the distribution utilities to publish their net metering program and the hosting capacities. Likewise, as far as practicable, net metering may be available in areas not connected to the main grid, but served by the distribution utilities. The DOE will develop a net metering guidebook that aims to provide the guidelines and standards and procedures for all net metering arrangement from offered to after-sales services by the net metering installers and practitioners. Another is the Green Energy Auction Program. The Department Circular DC 2020-07-0017 entitled Promulgating the Guidelines Governing the Policy for the Conduct of Green Energy Auction in the Philippines was signed in 14 July 2020, and it took effect on 13 August 2020. The Green Energy Auction Policy will serve as an alternative to the feed-in tariff system. GEOP will provide additional market options for RE developers / generators and will promote the competitive setting of rates for RE supply in the country. Ongoing drafting of the Green Energy Implementation Arrangement, auction design and terms of reference, and the determination of the total volume for RPS requirements are currently underway. The DOE conducted a series of public consultations for the amendment of the GEOP on August 5 and 6, just last month. Target date to conduct the first auction is in October this year. The IT platform that will serve as the medium for electronic bidding is currently being developed in collaboration with USAID, Energy Secure Philippines. Another project is the Competitive Renewable Energy Zone, or the CRES project. The establishment and development of competitive renewable energy zones in the country was promulgated through Department Circular DC 2018-09-0027 on 13 September 2018. The CRES is a proactive transmission planning approach that supports investments in large-scale transmission expansion upgrades to accelerate not only indigenous RE but also other potential energy sources. A total of 25 candidate CRES across the country was identified with an estimated gross capacity of 152 gigawatts of new wind and solar photovoltaics. The zones will also include an estimated 365 megawatts of geothermal, 375 megawatts of biomass, and over 650 gigawatts of hydropower capacity distributed across the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao systems. The CREST primer, entitled Ready for Renewables, Grid Planning, and CREST in the Philippines, was published on the DOE website in 2010. To ensure the effectiveness of the CREST project and complement the CREST areas identified, phase 2 of the project is now initiated, which covers the following. Activity 1 is the CREST implementation support. Activity 2 is enhanced load modeling and forecasting for long-term power sector planning. And activity 3 is the improved energy storage modeling and considerations. In meeting the country's projected demand, the DOE is committed to develop and utilize our renewable energy resources without sacrificing the achievement of our national energy security. We believe that it is best to focus on the resources that are readily available and extend all the necessary support to encourage and promote its development. Thus, special attention is on increasing geothermal energy development in the country, which is indigenous and base load. So last March this year, we had the consultation on the National Renewable Energy Program for 2020 and 2040. The NREP, as we call it, serves as the unified strategy to achieve the RE Act's goals in energy security, sustainable development, and climate change mitigation. NREP 2020 to 2040 takes off from the insights and learning gained from the implementation of NREP 2011 to 2030, driven by the goal of accelerating the country's clean energy transition. The NREP 2020-2040 sets the target of attaining at least 35% RE in the power generation mix by 2030 and 50% by 2040. The NREP will lay out the country's strategies to achieve these targets and develop the RE industry. RE policies and action plans, RE support strategies, and sectoral support outputs. The draft NREP 2020 to 2040 was presented to the public in March this year and is now being finalized based on the comments and suggestions of the stakeholders. I'd like to end by identifying the way forward. These are what you see in your screen, and practically all market development support mechanisms have been in place and just awaiting the corresponding regulatory frameworks to enable their full implementation. The DOE is continuously working for the realization of the RE goals in the Philippines. That ends my presentation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for your presentation. And let me please kindly find there were 2 questions in the Q&A session, Q&A box, and if you have the time, you can tap the answer for the audience through the box. And okay, let's turn to
We'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now is the second speaker with the second topic about SunAsia's 1.25 gigawatts solar projects in Luzon with the Blueleaf Energy by the Ms. Tachi Cruz Kaplan, the president and the CEO of the SunAsia Energy. Hi, Ms. Kaplan. Are ready for sharing presentation? Yes, we can see it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. According to the scientists in NASA, and I'm showing it in my screen, every 2 minutes of energy reaching the Earth from the sun is equivalent to the whole annual usage of humanity. This means that all energy used by the world's population, everything moving, all the lighting, all the cars, all the air conditioning and the heating in the world used in 1 year is equivalent to only 2 minutes of sun. Well, this is a fact. And this is what the partnership of SunAsia and Blueleaf is about. Blueleaf and SunAsia connected because we have a common vision and shared interests to address climate change and to make the 2 degrees Celsius possible. We collaborated because we want to explore the multiple ways to use the power of the sun to change the course of our future. My presentation today will reveal how this partnership came about. Let me start by this quote. This is a favorite opening lines from a book written by Charles Dickens, The Tales of Two Cities. It said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. These unforgettable lines captured the duality of the situation in Europe in the 1800s. At that time, there was fear and terror among the population, but at the same time, there was excitement that filled the hearts of the French people as they anticipated the power shift, the end of the monarchy that was to come. Yet there was uncertainty because they were used for several years under the rule of the monarchy, but they were hopeful and optimistic. I chose these opening lines and the words in the quotation because they are relevant today as they were in the 1800s. Why? I think you have seen this picture several times on your screen, but look at our present situation. This virus affected thousands of people around the world. There is fear and terror among us as the Delta variant descended upon thousands of households, spreading this virus in our community like wildfire in the forest. After a year of lockdowns and deaths, border controls and quarantines, we are still uncertain about our future. We are all watching our scientists and hoping that a breakthrough will end the pandemic. In the Philippines, the first recorded case was in January 2020. 2 months after, the cases jumped to 633, and that was immediately followed by a hard lockdown in Metro Manila in March 2020. Partial resumption of activities happened in June, but only after a month we had our second lockdown. Again, after months of lockdown, there was a partial resumption in August. And then after that, followed other lockdowns. Because of this series of lockdowns, our unemployment recorded 17%. Our GDP dropped to 3.7 from 6%. This was the darkness that the birth of the partnership happened. Blueleaf and SunAsia signed the joint development agreement in June to formalize our co-development of a 1.2 gigawatt solar project. In the middle of the pandemic, there was excitement and optimism among our team, believing that this crisis will pass. But what was the driving force? What compelled us to pursue amidst the crisis? I think, as our previous speaker has said, the Renewable Energy Law. Today, 10 years after the law was enacted, several provisions in the law are now being implemented. The policy environment, which again our previous speakers has validated, has given the Philippines a perfect haven for investing in RE. There is the renewable energy market, the net metering program, the green energy auction. These are the reasons that compelled both the SunAsia team and the Blueleaf team, including the Macquarie team, to close the deal. Let me explain further. The major enabler today is the implementation of the Renewable Portfolio Standards, or the RPS. The RPS mandates a 1% increase in RE offtake yearly in order to achieve a transition from a 79% thermal plant contribution to a 65% thermal plant. Inversely, RE share is expected to transition from 21% to 35%. That is a 15-point drop in a matter of a few years. Again, what is exciting is that many experts believe that the shift will lean towards solar energy. It will essentially be like what happened in the feed-in tariff regime, a solar-driven growth, similar to the wild rush in 2019, when solar grew from 2 megawatt to 1 gigawatt. This time, solar is expected to grow from 1 gigawatt to 15.9 gigawatt. These numbers are fearless, and they are certainly enough to push SunAsia and Blueleaf to forge its partnership. But where will solar be installed? What building 15 gigawatt of solar plant will need 15,000 hectares of land? That is roughly 1/4 of Metro Manila covered with solar panels. And if you roll it out in the rural areas, that will basically compromise our food production. So let us look at one option. The test bed in Laguna Lake, which we developed in partnership with Green, is but a tiny fraction of what our natural resources offer. There are about 220,000 hectares of lake water surface in the Philippines. If we use even just 10% of the total lake water surface, we can build the 15,900 megawatt of solar plants. On top of this, we have a number of dams and bays all over the country. Remember, we are an archipelago surrounded by waters with a coastline longer than the American coastline. We have water resources to support our aspirations, and we don't need to compete with agriculture. In other countries, hydropower plants, ponds, water reservoir, amusement parks were all developed and harnessed for solar power. Studies already reported that several benefits of solar produce positive results for the society. Number one, it taps and harnesses abandoned or unused water resources. Number two, it reduces evaporation in the dams, thereby saving precious water for drinking and irrigation. It keeps our water reservoir cleaner as solar prevents growth of algae bloom. It cuts system losses as water bodies, especially when water bodies are closer to the load center. Look at this graph. Floating solar is still an emerging technology. Yet today, commercially, over 1 gigawatt of solar installations are operating all over the world. The biggest, of course, are in Asia, China, and then Singapore, a very small country, has 60 megawatt in their Tengen reservoir. Japan has 210 megawatt, and Taiwan has 180 megawatt. With the partnership of SunAsia and Blueleaf, it becomes possible for the Philippines to become the leader in the floating solar space in Asia. Our goal is to build 1.2 gigawatt of solar project, and this will bring us closer to the country's ambition of transitioning into a zero fossil fuel regime. We are confident we can realize our aspirations for 2030. For 2 years now, together with MGen, we have been studying the ecosystem of the lake. We now understand better the wind and wave movement of the lake during monsoon season, both northwest and southwest monsoon. We know what flood orientation yields highest, or how the moorings ought to be done given the depth and the wind patterns of the lake. With MGen and Blueleaf as our partner, these learnings are further enhanced. Blueleaf's global experience on solar, their long track record in design, engineering, and construction, and their pioneering spirit, together with MGen, will make this happen. We have carefully selected our sites. Our commitment to the environment and concern for the fisher folk that depends on the lake for their livelihood is paramount to us, and it becomes the centerpiece of our development. To summarize, the marriage of SunAsia and Blueleaf promises to fulfill the country's energy transition, but it will also transfer the technology locally. It will build our capacity in design, engineering, and construction. It will increase investments that will help us create green jobs and accelerate the recovery from the pandemic. It will promote small-scale businesses in floating solar locations, as it will attract several educational visitors and tourism. We are racing against time. On November The leaders of the 21 nations will meet again in November in Scotland. They have already raised the red alert. And we must remember that energy emissions account 80% of CO2 release in the atmosphere. Worse, the 30% rise on emission happened in only 7 years. If we do not act now, global warming is upon us. This is the call that SunAsia and Blueleaf are heeding to. We would like to build 1.2 gigawatt to change the course of our path in the next 10 years so that the 2 degrees Celsius becomes possible. By building 1.2 gigawatt of solar plant, we offset 1.2 million metric tons of CO2, 2.9 million of oil barrels consumed, 540 million gasoline liters consumed, and 636 kilos of coal burned. Join us in our journey to make this transition happen until 2030. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thanks for your available presentation, Ms. Kaplan, and it's really excellent explanation on the large scale solar chains. It's especially the emerging floating solar plants. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us the knowledge about this. And the third speaker will come from the Blueleaf Energy, the Arnold Ariel, the Corporate Solution Director, and his topic will be the trends in corporate renewable energy demand, a perspective from the Blueleaf Energy. Hi, Arnold.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. And you can share your screen now and start the presentation now.
Yeah, give me a second.
Yes.
I am sharing the screen now. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for having us, and it's a pleasure and an honor to pick it up from the call to action from Techi, from SunAsia. I mean, she made it very clear, right? But there is absolutely an emergency for, I mean, societies, communities, and the economic forces to take action. She also made it very clear that the solutions are at hand. I mean, the sun energy is there to be harvested. The technology, or technologies exist. And I think it's just about making sure that, everybody kind of pulls together in the same direction. So it was good to hear as well from DOE that, there is a continuous effort, in the Philippines to create a more favorable environment, for the adoption of renewable energy. And I will just, try over the next 10 or 15 minutes to give a little bit of a corporate perspective, as to what corporate, companies or off-takers are looking for, shining a bit of a global angle on this, given the background of Blueleaf and Macquarie. So a few slides of introduction or recap. I mean, Blueleaf is obviously a partner to SunAsia, but is part of the Macquarie, ecosystem. Macquarie Group, that is. So Macquarie is, one of the largest, investment, banks in the world, and based in Australia, but operating worldwide, with, huge numbers of assets under management, but a very strong focus on renewable energy. So I will, give a few more data points on the Macquarie kind of experience in that space, which is quite significant. I mean, there is more than 30 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity currently under development within the Macquarie Group. There's more than 34 billion US, committed, to support those projects. And that's really, global across the world, really over more than 25 markets, globally. One point I would like to highlight is that, and I will come back to it later on in the presentation, Macquarie is also very active as a renewable advisor. because as we see, things evolving over time, we see a definite demand as well from, corporate customers, not only to acquire, renewable energy, but also for advice in that space, and really Macquarie covers all of those angles. So we'll come back to it a bit later. Now, I mean, just to help, put things, in perspective and position Blueleaf within that ecosystem, because, we have a lot of partnerships like the one we signed last year, with SunAsia for the Philippines. But, Macquarie has got equity, investment, in platforms across the world. So Blueleaf is the bit on the right-hand side. So we operate across all of Asia, either directly or through, platforms in which, we have a participation. So in Japan, for instance, a joint venture called Hinode Energy, and in India, very active with Vibrant Energy as our, partner. And Blueleaf or Macquarie has equivalent platforms to Blueleaf in other markets, including Savion and Calibrant in North America, and Zero Generation in Europe. The point here is that customers are now expecting global solutions, more and more. They just don't want to, deal with requirements in a particular location, but they're looking for solutions across the world. And companies like Macquarie and others are building a global ecosystem to deal with that. So zooming in a little bit within Blueleaf, where we're coming from, the company has got quite a strong track record, for the legacy of the companies that kind of used to form Blueleaf, going back quite a few years. So there's more than 2 gigawatts of track record built, across the world, and more specifically 500 megawatt, of solar projects specifically developed across Asia Pacific. So very strong team, a very strong track record that spans the whole project lifecycle from development, where the 1.2 gigawatt that Techi was talking about, is currently fitting, all the way to EP and C, and eventually, obviously, including financing, but eventually also covering, operation and maintenance, asset management, and obviously a very, very strong focus on health and safety, which is quite tricky. And from my own firsthand experience, requires very special focus on floating PV projects, which are obviously higher risk projects, than a typical ground mount, opportunity. And to provide again a map of the region in terms of where Blueleaf is located today. I mean, operating in all key markets in Asia, including Japan. Obviously, Philippines is one of our biggest focus area. We have quite a large team deployed across the Philippines, but operating also in Taiwan, obviously in Singapore, but in India and and Vietnam as well. And some examples of track record, just to provide an example of what's happened, over time, to catch a few crumbs of this opportunity that Techi was referring about, this 2 minutes worth of sunshine that could power humanity over an entire year. I mean, there's already been some of it done already. So within Blueleaf, we're looking at, ground mount projects in Thailand, Philippines, quite significant ones. But in Australia, some combined projects, with PV and storage, and a number of rooftop projects. So there's a small one in Singapore on the picture here on a pretty iconic building. But there's a few more across the patch. One trend which I will come back to in a second in terms of renewable, procurement or demand for renewable energy, across corporates is, spanning across technologies. So clearly we are seeing customers asking for on-site behind the meter solutions, but definitely more and more asking for much bigger volumes of energy, so then utility scale projects, come into play, on different countries offer different frameworks to service that. But we are seeing definitely a strong interest in energy storage systems as well. I will come back to it a bit later as to why that makes sense for some customers. But and Blueleaf is busy across all of those areas, and has got a track record in all of these areas. There is another one which is also coming up where Blueleaf is currently investing and developing capability is on wind. Macquarie has got a huge track record of onshore wind and offshore wind, and within Blueleaf in Asia, we're making quite a lot of investment in that area as well. Sorry, I think we already saw that. And some examples of on-site projects, which is one of the aspects I mentioned earlier, and again, capability and track record, within Blueleaf that spans across multiple countries, from really small 100 kilowatt project all the way to multi-megawatts on certain rooftops. Zooming in, I think to really the point we wanted to discuss in more details, and keeping in mind, we're a bit behind schedule. So, I mean, some data points on corporate demand for renewable energy. I mean, the world needs to take action, and corporations are paying attention. Quite often they have their own agenda, their own strategies, given driven by their own internal kind of considerations. But there's also a significant external stakeholder pressure, for corporates to kind of move the needle on the share of renewable energy that they're using across their operations. So the first point really on the trend in renewable energy demand from corporates, is a rapid expansion. I mean, this is from the International Energy Agency data. The corporate procurement, corporate PPA, as we call it, volumes by technology over the last 5 years, and you can see that it's increasing significantly. And if anything, 2021 should kind of blow those records. It looks like it's going to be a huge increase from even 2020. So a significant increase. And as I think we heard, from both Techi and the DOE, solar is leading in terms of volumes of contracted energy. What the second trend we are seeing that's really quite clear across the market is that corporate customers just want renewable energy, and more often than not they don't really care what kind of energy it is, as long as it can meet their requirements. And it really covers all five main technologies that we're looking at. I mean, and Macquarie and Blueleaf is active across all of those. So that includes definitely solar PV, but we are seeing definitely, as I said, a strong demand for onshore wind as well, where applicable. And I was interested to see that there is definitely a plan for Philippines to adopt more wind going forward. There is offshore wind, which is really a very rapidly growing segment within the renewable energy space. With quite a lot of developments in Korea and Taiwan, China and Japan, and Vietnam as well is looking at significant volumes of offshore wind. Waste to energy, Macquarie is investing in a few of those projects across the world. And definitely energy storage as well, as I said, is a strong enabler for some projects to happen, often in combination with RE projects, but sometimes as a standalone, directly feeding or connected to the grid. And the last significant trend we're seeing, for corporate, renewable demand, really is an increase in scope, that the corporations are asking for, from developers. One of them is, if you want, the starting point is, a corporate customer, going to developers and asking for, okay, give me a PV system, a solar photovoltaic system, because that's what I want, So that's obviously been going on for a long, long time. And that really would be the first step on the ladder. But quite clearly, what we have been seeing over time is corporations more and more asking for the developer to make the investment and own the asset, so that the corporate customer would not need to carry, the project on its own balance sheet. And that's where companies such as Macquarie and Blueleaf, but other, developers as well, are happy to come in and offer the PPA for that particular technology. So there'll be a PPA for a PV project or a PPA for a wind project. That is definitely something we've seen for the last few years, and it's quite well established and mature. We are seeing a trend in a few markets, and actually we are directly involved in Blueleaf on a few projects, that combine multiple technologies. And an obvious one, or two obvious ones or examples would be, for instance, combination of ground mount photovoltaic combined with onshore wind. We are developing a few projects, where we are combining the two, and that has very significant benefits in terms of load profile, given that the wind load profile would be very different to the solar PV one. So we are seeing increasing interest and demand, and obviously not all locations, give the ability to deploy both, because wind resource is not often not the same as a solar resource, but there's a few locations and a few countries where it makes sense. And we are looking at projects like this, for instance, in Vietnam or in India, which is quite exciting. Similarly, we're also looking at combining energy storage and other technologies. So there are projects, for onshore wind with storage, combined with storage, PV as well and storage. And sometimes all three combined, where you can really get to very high levels of stability of supply, if you combine wind, PV, and storage as well. We are definitely seeing an increase in technology combinations. And there's another few projects we're looking at. We have one particular one we're developing at the moment, with a combination of existing, on-site liquid fuel generation with PV and storage. So the objective would be to, it seems impractical or difficult for that particular customer to let go of the on-site, generation using a liquid fuel, but at least reduce that share significantly by introducing PV and storage combined. We're looking at it and quite excited about the potential. The next step, as I mentioned earlier, is the advisory, demand that some corporates are putting. Because, as I said earlier, a lot of large global conglomerates are saying, look, I need to move a needle, on moving my whole renewable energy, share within my scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 kind of portfolio. What can I do? And that's where, a company like Macquarie is very actively engaged. It's the number one, advisory, in the world in that respect. And there's been some landmark projects, sometimes even combining multiple, of takers, as we call them, or corporate buyers together, so that, you end up with a more streamlined, more effective, procurement platform, for large projects. There's been hundreds of megawatts of renewable projects, closed on that basis in Australia, for instance, where Macquarie was the organizer and combined, not only the procurement, but provided advice to customers, multiple customers, multiple corporations. And then, beyond that, you've probably again, seen and heard, from multiple governments or companies that they have a target for net zero. And then, it goes even beyond renewable energy, because you need clearly renewable energy to achieve that. But there's an element of, carbon capture and sequestration that is often required, for the, very hard to reduce, emissions of greenhouse gases or CO2 as well. So then, there's kind of a really broad consulting space that's already open, and where companies are active. But really, we're seeing, an escalation of demand from corporate customers, moving, beyond single technology into a much broader, range of offerings, and we're trying to follow up with that. The last point I wanted to make, and trying again to be mindful of time, is hour matching, because that is really a very recent trend we've seen in the market. But we don't think it's going away. If anything, we think that's going to accelerate. And I wanted to kind of give an example. So that's really, one that I picked up very recently from Google in Europe, in Germany in particular, where they stated, their target for, renewable energy procurement on an hour matching basis. And what it means basically is they're looking at, that is today's picture. And they're looking at, okay, from January 1st to December 31st, looking at all 24 hours in the day. So if you make your calculation, you'll see that there's more than 8,700 hours in 1 year. What can I today already, get as a renewable energy within my portfolio? So obviously in Germany, they have access to some legacy, carbon-free energy, from a combination of, programs. So that is kind of the picture we're looking at today. But they are wanting to increase it. So the target within a couple of years is to actually make that greener, going up to 80% of carbon-free energy, combining wind and solar plus other, legacy, carbon-free solutions they have, access to in that particular country, which is Germany, as I mentioned. So that is kind of a 2 to 3 year, target, that Google has in Europe. But, the end of the day, the end game is this, is to really get to 100%, and that's matching the supply of energy with the demand of energy, 100%, throughout the entire year from midnight to midnight for 365 days. And obviously that requires, a whole range of technologies. As I said earlier, you cannot just rely on solar for that. You can't just rely on wind. You need other technologies. Definitely energy storage will be one, but there might be other technologies as well, to achieve that objective. So in terms of trends, for corporate demand for renewable energy, definitely the hour matching, we see something that will probably not go away, and if anything, will only step up. And last but not least, bringing it kind of closer to home in terms of, I mean, we've seen numbers in the Philippines, which are really encouraging, but in terms of Asia Pacific, at least, and corporate PPA volumes. So again, IEA source, International Energy Agency, we're seeing the numbers really increasing quite rapidly. And again, within Asia, we're also seeing volumes, being really significant, in 21, which would be a strong increase from 2020. And 2020 itself, was 3.8 gigawatts, within Asia of corporate PPA, procurement, which is a quite large number. But that was doubled from 2019. I think it's worth kind of highlighting that because when we talk about increase in our space, we're looking at really exponential increase. And as I said, we expect that trend to continue. So it's really huge volumes we're looking at. As Techi said earlier, for solar in particular, in Philippines, we're looking at, multiples increase, like 10 or 15-fold over, a very short period of time. Within the 3.8 gigawatt in 2020, India was kind of the number one, followed by Australia and Taiwan. These were the three main markets in 2020, but that is quite dynamic. Taiwan was driven by one particular large transaction, for instance. So we expect Taiwan probably to drop off, in 2021. And I believe, I think all the everything's in place for Philippines to really, get up at that ranking, in terms of corporate PPA procurement in Asia Pacific. And in terms of who's buying or who's asking for it, I mean, manufacturing companies tend to be, the biggest, off-takers, as we call them. I mean, we as Blueleaf are talking to companies in food and beverage, in construction material, but it's many manufacturing companies, industrials, as we would call them. But there is obviously a trend, on technology or data centers, are obviously a very fast-growing market, with a lot of demand. And that's a market that is, as of 2020, made up for less than 20% of, corporate PPAs in Asia Pacific. But we expect that number to increase, given their demand. And that's it for me, for the moment. I just wanted to give a little bit of a broad perspective on the corporate, trends, in terms of renewable energy procurement. And I will leave it to you, to continue and hear back from what Total Energies, is offering in the Philippines specifically.
Hello.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you for sharing about the corporate demand from the renewable energy industry. And please kindly check, there was one question in the Q&A box for you. Please, if you have the time, answer the question for the audience. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's turn to the next speaker from the Total Solar, Mr. Sandro Bruni, the sales director of the Philippines. And his topic is Philippine C&I market characteristics, overview, and opportunities. Hi, Sandro.
Hello, Grace, and thanks to Arnaud. Arnaud has a great experience in C&I market in Southeast Asia. I believe you should be able to see my screen right now.
Yes, I can see it clearly.
Okay. So I thought that it would be useful to talk about specific features and numbers of the C&I market in the Philippines. Personally, I've been working for 6 years here in this beautiful country. Before I was working for a German company as a pure installer, and now under Total Energies. And I think that I can give you, I would say, reliable numbers and what I believe it can be improved, what I believe the opportunities are, and also the threats, given also the specific situation in which we are living. So very briefly, when we are talking about the C&I market in the Philippines, we are basically talking about the self-generating facilities. In the first presentation by the DOE officer, you saw that the own use under PPA, pure PPA scheme is a very small amount of megawatt. in reality is the majority of the systems built in the Philippines are under the SGF category. Okay, so if any rooftop project needs to secure a certificate of compliance under different categories. And the most popular is the self-generating facilities certificate of compliance, right? So we can have in the Philippines several business models, and of course we have an outright purchase. We have also a second model that is a PPA signed by an independent power producer with an off-taker. And for rooftop projects is not really used. And then there is a plethora of other projects that where the end user signs a long-term commercial agreement with a third party. And this is where we are actually in the CNI market here, right? As I said, the standard power purchase agreement is not that used for this market, for the CNI market in the Philippines, because it is actually very much time-consuming and costly process in terms of papers to manage an application to submit. So as I said, all the players, both under the outright purchase scheme, of course, and under different agreements on a long term, like such a build, operating, transfer, or rent to own, or financial leasing, are opting for this simplified procedure. So the title of this slide is Philippine CNI market key numbers. Huge potential, but I would say still potential, meaning that the market is nice here. I think it could be much better, to be honest, compared to as Michael and my buddy Arnaud from Blueleaf knows very well, because he's been working on a regional level. Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia right now are much bigger market than Philippines. So maybe through these slides we will understand a little bit more about the reason why we are encountering some difficulties in expanding the market. So as also shared before, the solar aggregated installed capacity in the Philippines, we are talking about 2,000 megawatts. This is including the utility scale project, right? It's not that easy to understand what is the aggregated CNI capacity up to now, but my estimation is between 200 megawatt, 250 on that range, which represents 10% more or less of the overall aggregated capacity in the city in the Philippines, including the utility scale projects. So this is a number 6.43 is exactly the number that I saw in the DOE slide. Of course, I took this number from the DOE website. And as you see, that own use awarded solar project as of May 2021 is just a very small portion of the capacity that has been actually installed in the Philippines. Working in this market, I can tell you with a certain degree of accuracy that when we are talking about CNI market, we are talking about around 50 megawatt, actual 50 megawatt per year in the Philippines. This is definitely a number that can be improved. It is true that the awarded approved project, young developers or sign contracts with off-takers, they try to find an agreement. And I've personally saw many agreements signed here in the Philippines, but that have never been executed over time. So I would say there is a discrepancy between the papers, the agreements that are contractualized in the Philippines and the actual projects that are executed. There are reasons related to the non-bankability, non-compliance, for several reasons, or lack of funds, of course. And one of the most interesting topic in the Philippines is the net metering, which I believe is the threshold set at 100 kilowatt is actually, in my opinion, the biggest limit to the expansion of the CNI market in the Philippines. As you can see, the potential, in my opinion, of the CNI market would be minimum double of the capacity we're actually observing in this market if the net metering threshold had increased to at least 500 kilowatt or 700 kilowatt or customized also. It depends on the situation. Also, in the last row of these slides, you can see that the ratio between outright purchase and long-term agreements is basically 20 to 80%. Okay, so let's quickly go through the what I can identify as a barrier of the market. As I said, the net metering is the main one, in my opinion. Is an arbitrary threshold set in the 2013. There is some also resistance from the EU to implement it. Then red tape, as I said, costly and time-consuming processes. From an administrative point of view, since in the Philippines, because of this threshold of the net metering, we need to install a zero export device. We cannot inject excess of power into the grid. This is limiting a lot the capacity that can be actually installed in each facility. So whenever we ask the EU or a cooperative the load profile, which is the base, the data on which we base the capacity, then there is a big delay. There is also sometimes rejection of net metering application, despite is a requirement under the Renewable Act 9513. Of course, there are barriers related to the regulation, which is minor issues, I would say, because after all, is the SGF process for self-generating facilities is not bad. Is quick, to be honest. Could be better. And then, of course, another barrier is it's very difficult to raise debts here for any company that wants to install solar. It takes long time, and the conditions for the loan are sometimes not favorable. And of course, whenever we install a solar project, we definitely are bothering the use and comparatives, right? Any player in the market that installs a solar is generating power for himself, and this means less incomes for the cooperative and for the distribution utilities. So after all, also everyone, of course, has to bring a meal on the table. So this natural resistance is perfectly understandable. And another barrier is that actually, I can show in the next slide the trend of the tariff. Actually, the generation rate in the Philippines is very low. Meaning we are at the level of 3.5 peso per kilowatt hour for bulk industrial consumers, I would say. And I've seen many bills of these typical customers. These results basically might result in very little savings for the end user or no savings if the solar system is installed. So this is another natural barrier. Overall is very good for the country that the generation rates are lower now, of course, but this is actually actually a barrier also for the solar market. As you can see in this slide, I couldn't find the updated one, but the trend is the same, even though we are the graph represents until 2015. But you can see that from 1990 to after 25 years, you can see the green line. The green line is the industrial tariff, basically from 4 pesos dropped to 3.5 pesos, which means zero inflation. And the tariff right now, the generation tariff right now for industrial segments is lower than 25 years ago. And currently we are, as you can see from the description, it is more or less the same level. And when we are analyzing a bill, the transmission and distribution components, of course, they are based on contracted capacity. So actually they are fixed costs for a company. Therefore, the savings must be computed accordingly. So for each of the items that we listed in the previous slide, we can also find some opportunities, right? In reality, the net metering could be, instead of having an arbitrary threshold, which is in many cases are penalizing both takers and also the use, the threshold could be increased and customized based on location and energy demand. And also the digital cooperative, since there is this renewable portfolio standard targets, actually the user cooperatives, through the implementation of a higher threshold the net metering, could benefit from this and also be compliant with the set targets as well. So as I said, in my opinion, the market is very conditioned by the net metering policy at the moment. Even though I understand that something is on DOE desk and they're working on it, and we will have a look at the draft and that the DOE officer shared before. So the opportunity are simplification of processes, simply regulation of the hybrid agreements, right? Because at the moment, the self-generating facilities is not really precisely regulated when it comes to long-term agreements with potential investor or partners. And I understand there is a draft that has been released years ago, but still the situation seems to be the same as 5-6 years ago. Yeah, of course, if we want to push also that they used to share the load profile in a reasonable time, and if we don't want a low end to reject the metering, we should apply some adequate penalties, I would say. Yeah, going back to the US and cooperative, actually, especially for those facilities where we can install a solar rooftop system, but there is an irregular load. For example, there is not a 24/7 cycle. The weekends, there's no load. Actually, the use could benefit from this injection of this kilowatt hour in the grid and split the profits generated by a PV plant also with the investor, with the off-taker, with the owner of the PV system. So this is talking about levelized cost of energy, right? I give you an example. This is a study made by Fraunhofer for the European market, specifically also mainly German. So as you can see in the highlighted yellow column, like PV rooftop large, the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour, this is in euros, but it's not different from dollars, is much, much lower than the hard coal. This is due to the cost, the increasing cost of the CO2 certification, CO2 certificates. And that means that in Europe, clearly, the renewable energy are already very much competitive, as you can easily see in this graph. In Southeast Asia, still, I think that the environmental cost of the let's say, coal plants or fossil fuel plants based on fossil fuel, they can definitely sell the kilowatt hour for a cheaper price than solar, or let's say be at least very competitive. But definitely what is increasing the cost of the fossil fuel plants, I think, is the policy that each country is implementing, right? For example, this CO2 certificates is just a policy that artificially increase the cost. But the point here is that it's not easy to quantify the cost of the pollution, basically. And so a private company just run numbers and they say, okay, we can sell it for 2.5 peso. But what about the cost of that all the communities have to shoulder? This is difficult to quantify, and only the government can, implement the right policy in order to make the renewable energy very much competitive with other standard sources. As you can see, it is already very competitive. This is a report that I updated to 2020, unlocking opportunities in a world of lockdown during COVID. And still, you can see that the orange line, the solar in Southeast Asia, there is a clear indication that in the next future, the LCOE will drop drastically. Okay. So last slide I have to share with you, and I hope you found this number useful to understand in which market we are working and where we are going. Is the COVID impact, right? So definitely this is a threat, and we all hope that this nightmare will end very soon. In case this will last for a couple of years, then definitely it will be a little bit of a problem. It is already, because we are observing a reduction of the demand. And I personally observed the financial statements of some company here, the major players in the retail industry, basically mega malls, super malls. And we really observed a significant drop of the revenues 2020 over 2019. We are talking about almost 50%. And remember that retail industry, in my opinion, I don't have precise data, but represent a very large portion of the CNI market in the Philippines. We are talking about 30 to 40%. Definitely, the future of the retail sector is not that clear at the moment. This is not just coming from me, but I've been talking with the owner of mega malls, super malls, and actually there is a real concern, and it is very likely that the business model will change. But the first condition is that this pandemic will leave us as soon as possible. Yeah, that's all from my hand.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for your presentation. And please kindly find, there was one question for you in the Q&A box. And if you have the time, you can tap and answer for the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you for your sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now let's turn to the next speaker from the Goodwe, Mr. Jia Jiang, the head of business in Southeast Asia and Middle Asia. Hi, Mr. Jiang.
Hi, Bruce. And so I start to share my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, good. So you can see my screen now?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Yes. Can you turn it into the full screen now?
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so thanks, Bruce, for holding this webinar, and thanks all of the speakers in advance me and behind me. We are very pleasure to holding this webinar. It's for Philippines, and Goodwe as a sponsor of this activity. We are very lucky today that too many of the industry friends coming and attend. So thank you, all of you. And so I will prepare about 20 minutes presentation about introducing the Goodwe company and the CNI solutions to refer to today's CNI topic. And first of all, we are going to review a little bit about the Goodwe history. The company was founded 10 years ago, and now it's already 11 years old. And in the last year, Goodwe is successfully be listed on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. Actually, our price of per share is increasing very fast. And Goodwe now is more than 2,500 staff people entity, and especially we have more than 500 engineers only working for R&D. So the percentage rate of the engineers is very outstanding compared with other company. Because the Goodwe is very focused and attention on the on the technical renovation. GoodWe now is a very global presence company. We have several branch company in the whole world, like Hong Kong, Australia, Germany, United Kingdom, Japan, United States, everywhere. So now we have two R&D center. One is in Suzhou, another is in Shenzhen, and then now we have two of the production center in Guangde and in Suzhou. And we got a lot of third party special awards from Wood Magazine, okay, from PV Magazine, from TUV Rhineland, and IHS top 4 of the 3-phase 3 inverters globally. And we have a lot of business partner and even R&D partners. And we have very famous projects working with the famous and big groups of the whole world. And in here, we present some of our performance and results that in China, we're absolutely top 1 of the rooftop. Okay, CNI business is also part of the rooftop. In India, top 1. Okay, in Spain, top 3. Turkey is top 3, Australia top 2. In Czech Republic, we are also the champion. For global energy storage segmentation, we are also the top 1. And we have a very interesting and a very valuable relationship with the GE, because the GE, GoodWe is the only company we can granted by GE to using their special license. And not only the brand, but also the whole research and the R&D resources. So in the future, frankly speaking, we are not the GoodWe company. We have 2 brands. One is the GoodWe, the red one. Another is this one, the gray one. So we have 2 products line. One is the GW, another is GE. And I'm going to share you about the products family. Okay, this is on-grid inverters, and this is storage inverters. Mainly, we have 2 of the products families. And for on-grid inverters, we can see we have the minimal size from 0.7 kilowatts up to 250 kilowatts, from single phase up to 3 phase. Follow the family roadmap, and we can achieve all of the residential CNI and multi-utility using for the PV projects. And storage inverter, we are the top 1 of the solar storage inverters business marketing share, from the very popular one, ES series, up to the ET series. These 2 brands, or these 2 family, ET family and ES family, are most popular in the whole world, in European, in Southeast Asia, in Australia, and in South America. And since this year, we are going to promote the market that we started to invade into the CNI storage industry. Here, we already have a BTC products. It's a 50 kilowatt hybrid one. Okay. And let's come back to the CNI, this topic of today. Now we have HT products, MT products, SMT, and STT. These 4 products family, which are focused for the CNI business. And the main feature is up to 12 weights of the MPPT units, full load at operation at a 50-degree considerator in Southeast Asia, in Philippines. The environment temperature is really high, and up to 15% of the AC overloading and more than 50% of the DC oversizing make you more flexible to assemble your PV projects. And we have AFCI, okay, very outstanding technology to identify the arc, to make sure the flame and the disaster will never happen in your PV plant. And we have power line communication too. And because of the 12 units of the MPPT units. So makes the Goodwill HT products have more power generating efficiency, considerate about the obstacles like hotspots, okay, different tilling and azimuth, the dirt, okay, mismatch, shatter, shading. With the more MPPT units, it can generate and balance the outputs of the power. And the DC oversizing and DC oversizing and AC overloading to make you more flexible to design your PV projects and saving the cost for sure. The DC voltage allow more modules per string, because with compare with the traditional inverters with the 1000 voltage of the DC side input, the Goodwill HT inverters have more efficiency. And here, the Goodwill is for we using the it's a real example which installed in Turkey. Our GW 50 kilowatts MT series, it start working at 200 voltage. So it start working in the very early morning and finish the daily job at very late evening. So the power generation every day is around 0.5% higher than other brands. So consider it about in a whole life, like 10 years or 15 years of the PV inverters, it's generating much more power and generate more cost for the end users. And because the very excellent the NMB fans equipped in the Goodwill MT series, so make it fully loaded and working at maximum 50 centigrades. So compare with the competitors, some of the another brand of the inverters. So it's really working and contributes a higher yield. Okay, and because with the more the better current input current support, so compare with the other brand and competitors inverters, the Goodwill inverters can support the bifacial modules in a better performance. Actually, our DC current up to 15 amperes. It can be fully compatible with the higher power modules. And the second part is about less investment. We already integrate. The first is about the SPD to prevent the tender. We already integrate the SPD type 2 and both AC and the DC side, and the type 3 of the SPD and communication board. Especially, we want to focus on this one because not all of the companies have the technology to integrate the SPD into the communication board. Consider it about in Southeast Asia, in the summer, in the raining, and a company with a flash and a tender. So SPD is very important in Southeast Asia. And we already integrated the anti-PID box into the HT products, saving the cost for you. And with our more with the HT products, we can save in the AC cables. Like we can support the copper and aluminum connectors, and MT series supports the maximum 120 square micrometers AC cables with the external box, and AC cable parallel communication and connecting with between inverters is more flexible and more easy. And the Goodwill HT products also integrate about the SVG function, because we are talking about CNI. So SVG is very important because the react power, it's always will cost you. So in traditional way is the end users and the holders should purchasing another reactive power cabinet. It's another part of the cost and the investment. Our HT products is already integrated SVG, and especially it's working, start working in the night. to compensation about the reactive power. Third parties O&M. Okay, the operation about the to operating the GoodWe products is very easy. You can using the LCD to configuration or using the apps by your device, smart devices, and with the block designing. So with to make the products easy to replace and for maintenance. And we have various of the communication way, okay, like Wi-Fi, okay, IS-485 communication, 4G communication, power line communication. It's already be the second generation PLC 2.0, and we have optical communication with communication with the EasyLock to contact with the weather station. I will present more details. For example, this one, consider it, we have a big plant and long distance support, long distance. So we can using the optical fiber to set up a ring network and maximal supported distance achieved to 20 kilometers. Okay, for example, maximal 30 inverters connected to one SCB 2000 box, which is also GoodWe's products. And this is GoodWe's monitoring system. It's a real dashboard. It's a screen. It's really like this. And especially I want to say that GoodWe's monitoring system is totally for free for Philippine CNI customer for using. Okay, we not only for free to using for now, but also for free in the future when upgrading the software. So with the SIMS, the monitoring system, you can connect it with the third parties platform. We are totally open our API. And yes, for this one, data log, okay, third parties, no problem, we can support. And with the IS-485 communication, we can contact with the network transmit, okay, support the firewall and access to the internet. Supporting to the SCADA, okay, and we can using the GoodWe EasyLock. It's a very smart and very small devices. Then you can connect with the third parties weather station, and all of the data and information can revert to the SIMS, and you can access to the SIMS by your own laptop or your devices, smart devices, to monitoring all the all of the information about how your plant is working. And we support the remote diagnosis and remote shutdown. That is also very important for CNI projects. We have IV curve diagnosis. You can access this functional by the SIMS, our monitoring system, and notify O&M companies, okay? And the engineers can go to the site or not go to the site. You can just operate the whole system. And for the installation of the inverters, we support all kinds of situation. The first, like independent installation on the rooftop, and our devices also support to lay down, okay, and like the wall mounted at the wall and mounted with the shed. Okay, so it's very flexible to build up your plant. And this is just like I mentioned, the PV modules arrays sometimes will generate some arcs. And with the second generation of the AFCI technology, we can detect the arc and refer to the monitoring system to make sure all of the arc can be detected, and the modules number, modules information will be referred to the end users to make sure the whole plant is safe. From my understanding, our AFCI's rate, the performance rate is more than 90%. It's a very good performance. The GoodWe's brand is stand for a reliable quality, okay? And we got a very special, for example, we got a very special certificate by our MT series. It's the TUV Rhine lamps, very good and a very famous VDE and 4110 award. That's the China. This is the TUV Rhine first time to granted this award to a Chinese brand inverters. Okay, and we have the reductant protection like aircraft engines and DSPs, similar with the CPU of PC, master and slave DSP integrated. The relay, the AC switch of inverters protection for the maintenance people, 2 sets relay integrated. And very excellent quality and inspections processed in Guru internal. We have very harsh and restrict testing and speed. We call it faster aging test in our lab and in our real operation plant. The last part is about some of the CNI case study. Okay, this is 9 megawatts rooftop CNI projects installed in Turkey. It's working. I remember it's already working for more than 80 months and excellent of the performance. This one is working in the Vietnam. You see, it's very beautiful and a very good environment and of the installation of the plant. And another one is also in Vietnam. Okay, very nice. Okay, thank you, everybody. I tried to save in the time for the next speakers. Mr. Junkie, he's also one of my best friends. So I will leave the speakers to Bruce and to Junkie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. And now please turn the speaking to the Junkie Castro. Hi, Mr. Castro.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us for this call. I appreciate, of course, first Goodwi, Chell, and the team for sponsoring this, and all the panelists. Just if you would excuse me during the presentation, I might have to turn off my camera. Just I have issues with my internet. But
yes, you can share your screen now.
Hold on.
Okay.
Give me a minute. Share screen. Can you see my screen?
Oh, I'm freeing out. And
okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. How about now?
Wait a minute. Yes, I can see it clearly.
Yeah, apologize for that. My internet is acting up today. Yeah, so great panel. I think great speakers overall. We learned quite a bit of things. I thought I would present a little bit on the basics, I guess, of power demand, and see how solar could fit into the power demand market in the Philippines moving forward. So there are 5 topics, but with the interest of time, I'll try to go through and browse on the key points for each slide. I wanted to touch base on power demand situation at the moment. Of course, everybody is going through the impacts of COVID as well, and that also has showed some impact in terms of our power demand in the Philippines. Then a little bit on the outlook of the Philippines. Why is BayWa also here? Why have we invested quite significantly in this market? What does the future holds for us in this market? Also technology, which is a key driver as well for innovation, for pushing solar ahead in the market. And how do we bridge the technology to real applications? So those are the key topics. I'll start with the first one. Starting with the power demand in the Philippines, These are data coming from 2019. The Philippine power generation had around 106 terawatt hours requirement in 2019. That's 21% share of renewables, and majority is still coming from fossil fuels, which is around 79%. But if you look at the data from 2015 to 2019, this represents a growth rate of around 6.6% year on year. However, as we have all known, in 2020, there was a shift, a demand mismatch on the grid as well, which has caused this to drop to around 1.3, or some even say more, overall in 2020. If you look at the installed capacity, around 25 gigawatt was installed in 2019. I don't have the latest 2020 figures, but if you look at that, majority was still coal, and then we have around a gigawatt of solar and 400 megawatts of wind. So if you look at the right-hand side, you would also see that the Philippines actually hold a large potential, a huge potential in terms of increasing renewable energy share moving forward to 2040. And that's given by the fact that we are also increasing in terms of demand. And in the next slide, as we are talking about the Philippines, it's good to show the map of the Philippines and see where most of the power generation is also coming. So majority of the activity is coming from the northern area, which is Luzon. That still holds about 72% of generation and share of capacity of around 68%. And then we have around similar numbers for Visayas and Mindanao, which is around 15%, representing around 2 gigawatts of peak demand and 15% of generation coming from those two islands. What this map shows you as well is we have a most of our power is generated and consumed on the northern area. What it means during the lockdown as well is that has really caused issue in terms of power demand. And that's the next slide, which I'm going into. How did COVID impact power demand in the market? So it has impacted us in many forms of our life until now. And it has also impacted the power. So if you look at this graph, this is basically a comparison of the power demand before what we call ECQ, or the Enhanced Community Quarantine, and during the ECQ period. What this graph shows you is it has really showed the vulnerability of our power lines as well in the Philippines. We are a big importer of fossil fuels. We lock in long-term guaranteed contracts with large-scale fossil fuel facilities, which we, as we have seen, has not really delivered the least cost of system up to now. Instead, it has even led us to inflexibility, price instability, and negative effects on balance of trade. So these are certainly things that needs to be addressed. How do we address the power demand shift? The lockdowns that we are having now I hope that it would end soon. But we also have to accept the fact that we might have to live with the pandemic, COVID situation, and localized lockdowns could happen. This impacts power demand. This is where the innovation and technology comes in place. This is where renewable also comes in place. And I'll discuss about the cost later on what we see, what we project the cost, and how this fit in the Philippine market moving forward. But I also would like to touch on the opportunities in terms of the power needs within the Philippines. There is, of course, concerns on the ongoing pandemic. This disrupts everything that's happening on the ground, the businesses as well. However, the economy is seen to grow post-pandemic era, and that would mean we also need higher power usage. And this is usually correlated with the GDP. Our assumption here is that GDP would grow to around 4% year on year after pandemic, after we have recovered on this. And the power demand will also grow. And if you look at the peak power demand in the Philippines, comparing to other Southeast Asian regions, you would also see that Philippines actually, against a assumption of 4% GDP year in year, would also grow at a high pace at around 3.6 annual growth rate from 2021 onwards until 2020, 2040 at least. So this also shows the opportunity that is in the Philippines in terms of increasing renewable energy sources. And that is also one of the reasons why BayWa has heavily invested in this market. We believe that there's a future in this market. There are certainly challenges and hurdles along the way, but the opportunity that lies ahead, especially on the CNI and distributed generation business, is even greater than the short-term risk that we see. If you look at the mix of energy until 2050, we are also, based on the assumption of GDP growth, that there will be a 10% growth year on year. And the key point that needs to be highlighted in this slide is the growth within the solar industry, which is expected to be around 37 gigawatts from 2019 to 2050. Another important thing to point out is with the issues that we are seeing, battery storage would be key as well for us to adopt on the changes. And this is something that is not new. We have seen the trend in other countries, mature countries like Europe and US, who are now moving towards energy storage investment. We are also seeing the same trend in other Southeast Asian markets like Vietnam, who had issues, who are now going through issues in terms of grid. The point is we shouldn't be more reactive. I think we have to be more proactive and embrace the new technology. There are certain policies in place, as discussed by the DOH, the DOE earlier on. Those are policies that are under works and that would support the growth of solar. And those will be important basis of the growth and to support renewable energy in the market moving forward. On the next slide, I also like this slide because what I really like about it is you see the blue color, which is the coal energy. And you see moving forward from 2020 to 2030, the coal capacity is declining. And what's very interesting is we also see a great growth coming from solar distributed, and also on top of it, utility as well. But the growth, the rate of growth on solar distribution business would be key for us to really meet power demand. And I think that brings a hope for us. I think that brings a brighter future for us in the renewable energy space to also focus our effort on the CNI space. On the next slide, you would also see that battery storage would also be key for us moving forward. The current situation in terms of grid in the Philippines makes it more suitable for battery storage. And it could span from segments like residential, some CNI space as well, and even utility space to help address the issues that we are seeing at the moment. But it's also good to point out that, again, the share of coal is going down and renewable energy takes over in the next few years. If you look at the growth in terms of meeting demand and ensuring we have enough supply, we could also say that it is energy storage as well who would play a dominant role. On top of solar, the combination of both technology would be a key role for us to meet the demand. And in this slide, you would also see that solar distribution is growing. That's the red line, as you could see in the graph. There's definitely going to be a mix of energy sources, but renewable definitely looking forward based on the ease of deployment, looking at the technology advancement, the competitiveness of cost that we have at the moment will be key for us in terms of meeting power demand as our economy grows. And on the discussion of LCOE, which is a key topic, there are different opinions depending on how you look at it. But there's one obvious conclusion to that. The LCOE has been dropping, and that's a combination of different factors. You could also see a lot of the manufacturers like Goodwe, who has been putting a lot of effort in terms of their research and development, improving the capacity, the efficiency of their product, driving costs down. Our projections is that by 2030 or even earlier, 2024, 2025, the LCOE cost of renewables, specifically solar, would become very, very competitive, looking at the rate of reduction that we have seen now from 2020 and projected in 2030 against traditional source of energy, which again gives us strong business case to really focus on renewable moving forward. So there are, of course, new technology. As I mentioned, these are the key drivers as well for us to drive cost down, drive LCOE down. And this would help us as well innovate to help the businesses meet the requirements of their customers. However, new technology has certain challenges as well. For example, battery storage is not really a new technology, but in some areas perceived to be new, though it has been a very mature technology in most other countries in the world. So one of the key challenges in terms of technology advancement is supply chain. This becomes more complicated. And as we could see, we have some audience here who is coming from EPC business, from installation business. The cost of supply chain is much higher than what it used to be before pandemic. And there's a lot of factors contributing to that. The logistics cost has increased. We have lockdowns in different ports. That all impacts the cost of every installer, every developers, all that is involved in the supply chain of solar. On top of that, it is a more complex supply chain discussion in terms of commercial terms, in terms of credit terms, also because of the situation where we are now. So supply chain would become more complex. Second is the design and integration can be complex as well, especially for a market like Philippines, where we are still relatively new. There are quite a bit of installers who are still learning, integrating new technologies. Design could be also complex. This is also key for us to address the education and to make sure that the installers are well knowledgeable. They are well aware of the technology and how to use this in the projects that they have. Third thing is the products. A lot of new products is coming in. What happens to the old products? How is the warranty going to be served for those products? When I started in solar, I remember the first installation I did was around 180 watt panel. That was a large panel. And nowadays we're talking about 550, 600 watt panels. The old products would definitely run out of warranty. The inverters are changing as well. So question is, with the new technology coming in, how do we deal with the old technology? How is the warranty going to be served? Fourth point is the new technology is also on the ramping up stage. So most of this manufacturing are still putting effort in increasing capability. There are also changes on warranty. This is also something that we have to look closely as part of the renewable energy space. What are the new defects? What are the new issues we might find in the new products that we get? The next point is cost. I think cost still is unstable, as you could have seen over the period of time that we have now. Cost has been changing, and that is driven by a lot of factors as well. This becomes a difficulty and a key challenge for businesses, EPC, who's unable to predict cost in the long term. The next one is the training and understanding. I would want to put an emphasis on this because this is very important. In the Philippines, the market is quite small. Everybody knows everyone. And one key issue on an installation site where there is safety concerns, may it be fire or someone got hurt, this spreads around. And that destroys the entire solar industry. That brings rumors which may not be founded, but that is a risk. So education for engineers and making them understand what the technology is. When I say these are local trainings, these are local support that you can rely on, is also very, very important. As most of the panelists also mentioned, there are different business models from PPA, from different approach in the market, which we also have to be aware and we have to be ready to adopt. On top of all this, I think we have also to change the buying mentality. The structure of buying has always been that we are reliant on one source supply. And that really also opened up issues along the pandemic, because if lockdowns happen in one country, that impacts a lot of businesses as well. So the buying structure also has to change. How do we work together to ensure that projects are still delivered, minimizing the risk on the installation side, on the EPC side, moving forward? And that is where my last topic comes through, which is bridging technology access. One of the reasons why BayWa has invested heavily in the Philippine market is we believe in this market. We are a global company. We are headquartered in Germany. We bring European technology and understanding in the country, but we really wanted to be perceived as what we call as a global company with a local presence. What we do in the Philippines is really focus on distribution business. What we do is to bridge the supplier technology towards the customer. What this brings to all the audience who are working on the EPC space, on the installation space, is that you get easy access to technology. The nice technology that could be pointed out earlier could be easily available for you. We also support innovation because we are a solution provider. We don't just supply inverters, we provide solution. And also the quality management, which is a key part for our business. We don't want to have issues. So one of the things that we really put a lot of effort is making sure that the components, the products that we sell to support our customers and partners has been tested, has been audited, and has gone through stringent quality inspection. And this is on top of what the manufacturers are already doing. We have had inspected few suppliers as well where we have rejected partnership with them because of some issues that we have seen along the way. So this gives the installers and the customers additional layer of comfort and protection as well, that the product that we distribute and sell in the market are of high quality. The second thing is the proactive customer support. Nobody could travel. If you are okay to do quarantine for 14 days or 21 days, you may be able to, but it's not as easy as before. Therefore, the local customer support is also key. And we have seen that over the pandemic where issues happened on site and they can send engineers coming from Germany or from China. So the local customer support becomes also a key consideration. How am I supported as a customer if something goes wrong with the product? And that is also something that we as a local distribution company able to provide to our customer. And the most important thing is financial stability. You are dealing with a company who has been operational for close to 100 years now. We are established as BayWa in 1923. We are very financially stable. We have the capital to grow, and you're dealing with a very financially company. That is key. It's not just any trading company or distribution company who decides to go to other business after a few years because he doesn't find the product profitable anymore. Just to give you a background of BayWa as well, we are part of a big organization focused on, I would say, all the key needs of humanity. First is food. We are present in agriculture business. We do a lot of trading of fruits and vegetables all over Europe and also other parts of Americas. We also focus a lot on digitalization. As you can see, the pandemic has also brought key focus on digitalizing. And that's a key investment which we are moving forward as well. We are also involved in building materials, sustainable building materials, mostly in Europe. And where we belong is on the energy business. So we are BayWa-RE, which stands for Renewable Energy. And our key focus is all the diverse business within the renewable space. A quick overview of our financials in 2020. A very profitable company with a growing employee. We are one of those few companies who has still been hiring over the pandemic. We're now more than 3,000 employees within the company and present in 30 countries in Southeast Asia. In APAC, we are present in 16 countries now. We are present globally with different footprints from Americas to Middle East and Europe and also APAC. This is our key focus in Southeast Asia. In APAC in general, we have a big footprint in Thailand where we are involved in all projects. Vietnam, we are also involved in wind and solar business there, including distribution. Indonesia, Malaysia. And for the distribution business, our strategy is to really put local people on the ground to support the customer, operate locally, have local warehouses to support our customers. In the Philippines, we have warehouses to support all our customers to ensure timely delivery. The current situation also warrants that project timelines are unpredictable. And it's difficult to ship goods now coming out of any ports. And to deal with BayWa gives you additional security that, hey, you have flexibility in terms of timeline because products are available in our warehouses in the Philippines. As I mentioned, we are involved in all different spaces within renewables. We're not just bringing our experience and knowledge in terms of distribution, but we also are a project developer. We have installed 4 gigawatts of wind and solar globally with a growing pipeline of 14 gigawatts. We have active presence and services, which is covering both operations and maintenance and also asset management. We have now around 7 gigawatts of direct asset under our management. And on the solution sides, we bring forward our strength in terms of procurement, in terms of distribution, and also the knowledge that we have in the solar industry. So quick figure in terms of purely solar distribution in 2020, we have sold around 1 gigawatt of modules, purely on distribution, not even including our projects and other business entities. Purely on distribution, around 1 gigawatt. In inverters, we've sold around 2 gigawatts. That gives you a scope of how big the company is in terms of distribution. The main differentiator that BayWa brings in the market is we are a very professional company. And we are here to stay. We have invested in the Philippines and we will continue to help the market grow and support our customers, and happy to support and serve you hopefully soon. That ends my slide. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. Thank you for your sharing about the BayWa's deployment through the global and especially in the ASEAN. And now let's turn to the last speaker, Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert from the AM Spectrum, sharing about the topic about new opportunities in residential solar. Hi, Mr. Robot.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah,
Are you ready for the sharing your screen and start the presentation?
okay,
Yes.
for a while. Uh, I'll just show my video. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
I know it's late. Let me just share my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. I can see it.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, Grace, for inviting me to represent Spectrum in presenting new opportunities in residential solar. So, residential solar, I could say, is one sector or market right now in the Philippines that has not been given much attention because of its scale. One residential customer is just what, ranging 2 to 5 kilowatts, sometimes 10 if it's a big residential customer. But the effort of applying for all the regulatory permits, it's still the same. The same requirements required by the local government, the same distribution impact study requirements that will be submitted to the utility or electric cooperative. So why go into residential solar? Okay. For those who are interested to know more about Spectrum and why we go into all the segments, not just the popular commercial and industrial segments, you can look us up at our website, www.spectrum.net.ph. Okay. We are a Meralco company. Okay. It means that the entire spectrum of services offered by Meralco, from design, construction, retail electricity supply, power generation, risk mitigation, insurance, electric vehicles, and for Spectrum, solar solutions are within reach of every customer once they engage their Meralco relationship manager. For residential customers, it is just a matter of reaching out to your nearest business center or even accessing the Meralco online application, which you can download for free in your App Store or your Google Play Store. Okay. So going into residential solar, even if it is just a small segment in terms of scale, is actually part of Meralco's 4 areas of its sustainability agenda. Okay. First is the planet. We're talking about small customers, 2 kilowatts, 5 kilowatts. But when we look at the entire picture, they form almost 90% of the customer count of every distribution utility or electric cooperative. So in terms of customer count, these residential customers have the numbers, but individually, they do not have the scale to catch our attention. And with the objective of helping the planet or responsible stewardship of the planet, embedding a culture of excellence and sustainability for people, caring for people, which involves residential customers, and providing clean power to the residential market. And then the overall sustainability agenda, which is providing a prosperous life for each household. That is the mission of Spectrum and One Meralco in engaging the residential segment. How big is really the residential market right now? Based on our latest estimates, it may form a small part of Spectrum's portfolio of 39 megawatts with 261 customer counts to date for the cumulative for the last 5 years. But it will definitely grow because the net metering generation is expected to grow with a CAGR of 30% until 2030. This is based on our latest estimates and computations, and based on a most recent source that we got. It's a Greenpeace report called Decarbonizing Meralco, which was published last April 2021. So definitely the residential market, when combined, is something worth taking a look at. And to the point of the previous speaker, when he mentioned that that one of the risks facing the solar industry right now is that there are other installers or maybe players that may have not been well educated regarding technology, solar technology. And then here comes an installation that was not done professionally. And it resulted into an accident or something bad happened. And it damages the image of the technology and the industry. And we don't want that to happen. That is a scenario which is prevalent in the residential market with a lot of DIY enthusiasts, and that may have not the same level of technical training compared to a corporate customer or a corporate entity or an engineering company. And the duty that we have as an industry is to reach out to these people in order for us to work with them in catering to the residential market. With that said, part of the opportunities in the residential market is offering innovative packages. Okay. Spectrum has been a big user of string inverters. And we've offered customers a portfolio of business models, which includes outright purchase, which is EPC. For CNI, we've offered power purchase agreements. And for some select residential customers and small commercial customers, we might be offering the same scheme. And we have been the operations and maintenance provider of choice for not just the CNI market, but also residential market. And access to latest technology. Again, we've been a fan of string inverters for the longest time. And that is still true and will continue to be true for commercial and industrial, and even utility scale. Okay. Although the central inverter manufacturers would beg to disagree. But personally, I believe that string inverters has a position also to claim in the utility scale space. But for the residential market, okay, we've partnered with the leading microinverter brand in the US and in the world, Enphase, no, to ensure performance, reliability, simplicity, safety, and intelligence in the residential packages that we are offering right now to the residential market. Okay, we have been used and had been educated that the only way to design a solar system is that the panels are connected in series, no? And these strings are connected in parallel, no? When connected to our inverter or our string inverter. But right now we're educating, no? Some of our brothers in the industry, even the do-it-yourself installers, that there is actually an alternative way, which is a lot safer because we eliminate the high voltage DC already, and we make the system purely AC, with the use of microinverters. In cases of shading, obstruction, nonlinear degradation, temperature difference, soiling, among other reasons why the system might not perform based on our simulations. No? Having microinverters in our system protects our investment, because if one panel is damaged or soiled, all the rest of the panels can still perform at maximum levels. Okay. And it's also expected to have better output by as much as 34% more than that of a string inverter, because the microinverter also has an optimizer capability, rapid shutdown capability, and has independence, since it is connected individually to one solar panel. Again, we have to overstress safety, safety, safety. And then related to opportunities in residential market, from a customer standpoint, customers have the opportunity to do away with the high voltage DC side of the system, and just enjoy the peace of mind of having a purely AC system, okay, which reduces the risk in totality for their household. In terms of compliance, the recent requirement for rapid shutdown capabilities in all solar systems, particularly those in the rooftops or buildings or houses, provides an opportunity for the microinverter to take a major role in the industry, because it besides the optimizer capability, it also has the rapid shutdown capability, which complies to the latest electrical code here in the Philippines. Not just in the Philippines, but all over the world. And to the customers out there, we just need preliminary information like your roof plan, and if available, your structural plan, electrical plan, maybe 12 months billing, and if possible, an hourly load profile, if available, with your distribution utility or electric cooperative. And this will form part of the analysis to create an optimum solar energy solution for your household. And We will be very glad to partner with each household, no, and be part of the customers that also take pride in partnering with a company like Spectrum with sustainability awards that we have gathered for the last 5 years. And I will end my presentation with this quote from our President and CEO, Mr. Ferdinand Helus, and I quote, "Spectrum strives for sustainability through its endeavors for both the people and the planet. Among our milestones are our large-scale installations in rural areas, which power underserved communities, which are all, by the way, residential. Through such endeavors, we help provide a brighter future for Filipinos." Okay, so this ends my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. God bless all. Okay, Brace.
Hi, Robert. Hi, Robert. Thank you for your valuable presentation of the Spectrum, and thank you very much for your topics. And at this session, we will always we will already finished all the sessions today, and by a deep understanding of the Philippines CNI solar rooftop market, and from the overview of the Philippines renewable energy policy and the profiles from the Department of Energy Philippines, and the prospect on large-scale solar in Philippines future from the SunAsia Energy, and also again from CNI insights from the different perspective from the Blueleaf Energy, Total Solar, and GoodWe. And we are also happy to hear some emerging hot topics like corporate demand and PPA and floating solar and utility scale solar. And we also hear about the professional analysis on the trends of the Philippines solution providers. Thanks to all our speakers here. Thanks to all of you your valuable speeches and the patient standby. Thank you very much, and really hope you enjoy this sharing process. And also thanks to all of our attendees for staying us till this end. Thank you very much. And at last, we also thanks again for our continued support from our sponsor GoodWe, and with the target of the accelerating the solar deployment in the ASEAN, and more digital content will be created by the lead associate to keep enabling the business networking and the insights sharing. And not last but not least, I would like to give you big thanks again to all of our attendees and all of the speakers, all of our audience, staying with us in front of the screens. And I hope all of you enjoyed this webinar and the emerging business opportunities and emerging business trends from in Philippines solar CI sectors. And thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this invitation to join you this afternoon in continuing this very important conversation. I regret that I'm not able to join you live for this discussion, but I hope that I can still contribute to this very important topic that the panel will be covering, that the panel of speakers will be covering this afternoon. So let me just start by saying that I join you this afternoon. Of course, we know that we are not in the best of circumstances. We are, in fact, living in quite difficult circumstances, but I remain optimistic. I remain optimistic for this industry. I remain optimistic for the Philippine power sector in general. And I know it's very hard. It's a glass half full perspective that I still want to maintain. And I hope I can invite you all today to just put our heads together and see how can we make this glass that's currently half full, how can we make it full to the brim and overflowing. And it's not easy, I know, but there are very wise people in this room, in this virtual room, gathered together. And I know we can find a way forward. We can find solutions. And let me just, maybe for this opening address, put some things in perspective. We know this year is quite as I mentioned earlier, a difficult year, a continuing difficult year from 2020 when we started in the Philippines this lockdown and this pandemic. And the year started out even more precariously when during the first quarter, we were greeted with news about supply outages or power outages in Luzon in particular. And we realized they were not mere warnings, they were not mere threats, because they were realized. There were, we all in Luzon suffered from rotational blackouts and for quite a long period where we weren't certain about the power supply situation in this main island of the Philippines. And today, you know, we're already in September, close to the Christmas months, and still we are addressing these issues on power supply, and very rightly so, because next year is quite an important year for us. We do not want these warnings, these threats of shortages affecting the elections. And this call by Senator Gatchalian for a probe, for an inquiry into the supply situation for the election period in May 2022 comes at the heels of an assurance from the Department of Energy just 10 days prior to this announcement, an assurance from the DOE that supply will be there. But why the hesitation? Why the seeming lack of comfort from the agency that is in charge of supply? Why do we still feel the need to, you know, to get more assurances, and what assurances can be better than, you know, what the agency head in charge of energy supply in the Philippines? What better assurance can be given to us? I think what this underscores are actually two things, and I'd like to share with you these 2 points for us to start this conversation going. First is, I think it underscores this urgency of utility scale build up. This is the first point. This urgency of utility scale build up, I think, we've seen this maybe not articulated, but definitely all the telltale signs are there. Just yesterday, the Department of Energy conducted a public consultation on the updating of the Philippine Energy Plan. So as we all know, I think I think most of us are familiar here that the PEP issued by the DOE was just released a few months ago. It was a 2018 to 2040 PEP, but now the DOE had sought it wise to update the numbers, update the targets, because we know that when last year we did not all realize that, you know, that we would still be in this state of pandemic almost 2 years down the road, and it requires an assessment, a revisiting of all our assumptions and projections. So it's good. It's a welcome development. It is a reality check that we need to constantly revisit our assumptions and projections. But what else do we see there? Aside from that updating of assessment and targets, we see policies being adjusted. 2 years ago, the Department of Energy, together with the inputs from the National Renewable Energy Board, which I headed at that time, issued the department circular putting in place the Green Energy Auction Program in the Philippines. When the GAP, or the Green Energy Auction Program, was initially passed, it was meant to be a tandem program for the RPS program mandated by the RE Act. It is to assist RPS mandated participants in sourcing their RPS requirements, in sourcing their recs. So that was the main point of the GAP. But what we see now with the recent issuance of the Department of Energy putting in public consultation the revised design for the Green Energy Auction Program, it is no longer just a complement to the RPS. It is now in addition to that, seeking to address the supply issue. Again, underscoring the urgency of utility scale build up, and good that that urgency or that build up is now being sought to be addressed by renewable energy resources. The third point, finally, is an alignment toward the clean energy scenario. I don't know if I know many of the people in the room were also participants in Department of Energy public consultations before, and you'd notice that the PDP, the Power Development Plan, and the PEP would normally have two scenarios: the BAU, or the business as usual scenario, and the clean energy scenario. And the clean energy scenario used to be really an alternative scenario, but today, and this is one thing that I'm really very happy about. When we started out discussions on updating of the National Renewable Energy Plan more than 2 years ago at the NREB, when I joined the NREB, our dream was really to have the clean energy scenario as the main scenario, not the alternative, but the main or the core scenario of our energy planning. And today we see that dream being realized, because the alignment of numbers, the alignment of programs are really towards realizing the clean energy scenario. And what does that mean? It's a commitment to at least reaching that 35% RE share target by 2030, which also requires an increase of the RPS percentage, currently at 1%, to what we have recommended at the NREB to be increased to 2.52%. That's part of it. There are a lot more components to the clean energy scenario, but we're seeing that now. Just yesterday, the DOE made part of their PEP public consultation this increase of the RPS to 2.52%. But what are all these things all leading up to for purposes of this afternoon's discussion? Solar, I think, is uniquely placed to respond to this urgency of utility scale build-up. We know that solar, among all the technologies, can be built in the time fashion or in the time manner that's required by this situation that we find ourselves in. Solar can participate in the JAP once the first auction round is announced or opened by the Department of Energy. It can also contribute to realizing that 35% RE share target by 2030. So there's a unique position held by solar in this scheme. There is one challenge though, and I'd like to be also realistic in saying that all these things, all these pressures building up, are all building up on the grid. There are all these demands that are currently being lodged on the grid. What if all these megawatts that are, all these capacities that are targeted to be realized in 2, 3 years, 4 years time, what if they're all ready? Will the grid be ready at that time? So there's pressure building up on the grid. And as noted in the competitive RE zone study conducted by the Department of Energy and the US NREL that was published last year, there is what's recognized as a time scale misalignment. Whereas it will take maybe 6, 12, 18 months to build up a solar project. It will take at least 3, maybe up to 10 years to get the grid ready to absorb that capacity. And what do we need to do? What do we need to do to mitigate that misalignment? Because it leads to the second problem, which is that circular dilemma, where in the CREST study, it was recognized that developers usually find themselves in this circular dilemma, where financing is not available or is not made available to them until there is an assurance of a market or a long-term contract or assurance of grid connection. But as mentioned earlier, there is that timescale misalignment on grid connection. So the CREST study is meant to be to take a proactive approach to transmission planning. But it will take some time before the shift in transmission planning will happen. And we know that, for next year, will the grid be ready? Will the grid be ready to absorb the capacity from solar, for example, that will come on stream, that will be ready to come on stream on that by that time? Will it be ready by 2023, where there is already an increase in RPS? Will it be ready by 2024? When the further increase in RPS comes online. So it needs, these are all pressures building up on the grid. So where does that leave us? So this is my second point that I wanted to share with you, that there is this growing imperative to self-provide. That's being created now because we are in this situation where pressure is building up on the grid. What do we mean by growing imperative to self-provide? Today, the economics already of RE, particularly of solar, is prime for small-scale deployment and the adoption of DERs, or distributed energy resources. The pricing is there to meet a particular need. And it's not, of course, it's a widespread need when we talk about it in the Philippines, but the solution need not be as widespread as the need, and need not be as immediate as for all, as immediate for all as it would be applicable. It can be on a phased-in approach where small-scale deployment can be adopted. Second point here, in terms of the imperative to self-provide, there is already all the programs that we need, for the creation and the growth of this, what we call prosumer sector, are already in place. Under the RE Act, 10 years after the RE Act, finally, we have the enhanced net metering in place. The GEOP, or the Green Energy Option Program, is already in place. The ERC just a few weeks ago issued already the regulatory framework for the Green Energy Option Program. And now customers that have an average peak of 100 kilowatt can directly contract for their preferred renewable energy suppliers that DOE had already licensed or given permits to. And together with that, 20 years after the EPIRA was passed, we have the lowering of the thresholds for the retail competition and open access. So we have all these policies already in place. So consumers are now empowered to choose RE and, again, to self-provide. Finally, we see a growing nexus, growing space for this synergy between energy and food, energy and shelter, energy and education, energy and transportation. And there is this what we call direct application of RE technologies to the sectors or to the need that is meant to be addressed. And what we see is also this evolving, emerging trend of sustainable development model for RE applications, for off-grid areas, for unenergized areas. So again, solar, in terms of the urgency for utility scale build up, is uniquely placed, and solar is also uniquely placed to meet this imperative to self-provide. So whether it's in the area of the grid or in the area of self-provision or direct to consumer requirement, there is that unique capability for solar to respond. So finally, where does that leave us, and what is the question that I'll be leaving you with, and what's the invitation for this afternoon's discussion? Will solar industry players drive this Philippine energy transition? I think there is a lot that's at stake, but there's also a lot that we all can do. And I'd like to think that for the people in the room, this invitation is already answered by your presence here, that you are ready to step up and be the drivers. The government, I think, has given, of course, there is more that we can ask for, but I think the building blocks are already set, and there's a lot already that we can do given what we have. And so I think the challenge is posed, and the question is upon us. And the answer is, I hope we can come up with the answers this afternoon in our discussion. And with that, thank you, and I welcome you to this event. And thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening. And maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.